Will WoW Classic die after Naxxramas? Oh, there's Nax right there. There he is, dude. Wait, where's me? Those are the days, dude. Classic WoW. Classic WoW.
MMOs are defined by content updates.
Mm-hmm.
It's a never-ending treadmill of gearing up and finishing a raid, and re-gearing up, finishing the next raid, and rinse and repeat.
Yeah,
it's
pretty
like
much.
real life, but instead you get purples instead of depression. Classic is wholly unique in the fact that it has a planned end. And even before its release, the big question has always been, what happens after Naxxramas?
They're gonna do TBC, dude. Like, there's no way they're not gonna do TBC. Like, I mean, let's be honest. Like, they're gonna do TBC. Like, there's no way that they're gonna do Classic Plus content. I don't think, because the problem is, like, if they bring in Classic Plus content, there will guaranteed be enough people in the game that don't like it to where they think that they ruined Classic, and it would just make them look bad. And it's such a risk to make new content, whereas re-releasing TBC, that's a pretty much guaranteed hit. I'm sorry to say, that's a guaranteed hit. You just re-release the expansion and people are going to like it again. Like, think of how many times Nintendo's re-released Mario and people still fucking buy it.
As of this video, the game is coasting along smoothly through the second to last raid tier on Courage, with most US servers holding a medium, high, or full population. In fact, the game has been doing very well, even exceeding Blizzard's expectations, as they had to increase the amount of servers on launch from 13 to over 40, because people were getting queue times like this. The goalpost from Classic's failure has been moved from it'll never launch because people don't actually want it
to do that either. You think you do, but you don't.
To it'll last a week or two before the rose-colored...
It's kind of crazy that guy's the president now, you know what I mean? It's like, of all the guys sitting in the chairs, of all the guys to make a comment, it's that guy's the one who ends up being the president. Isn't that interesting? He was right? I think he's right for some people and not for everybody, right? I mean, that's how at least I see it.
Goggles lose their touch.
Ooh.
Or after
I like the
people
drum
hit
roll
60,
there.
they'll
That was
quit.
good.
Or, well, give it a month. Give it 3 months.
Yeah.
Give it 5 months. Give it 1 year. It's like those crazy people who predict that the world is going to end every single day.
Yep.
Or it's going to rain today,
about right.
and it doesn't rain. Well, it's going to rain today, and it doesn't rain.
Well, okay.
Repeat that for about 3 months, and bam. You see? I told you it was going to rain today. You idiots didn't believe me.
Yeah, exactly. They say it every day. It's like, you know what the funniest thing is I actually saw comments about this. It was like in one of the videos where I actually did get a mount drop, and I got the mount drop, and they're like, bro, how did he know he was going to get it? He said, I'm going to get it right here, and then he got it. Blizzard's talking to him. He knew this was going to happen. Like, why is everybody getting excited about this? Like, this is obviously scripted content. What the fuck? And like, the people really... Yeah, it's like literally the best analogy, a broken clock is right twice a day. That is exactly how it is. And they're dumb as fuck, but there it is. I mean, like, I think that obviously Classic WoW, people's expectations for Classic WoW were probably not met entirely for a lot of the people that were like super unrealistic about it. There was no way that the game could meet those expectations. Like, realistically, people had unrealistic expectations for Classic.
The only difference is they're less annoying because when it turns out they're wrong, they just disappear. That's an internet classic right there. Argue up and down for years that you're right and everyone else is a moron.
Yep.
And when it looks like that's not the case, they don't say, oh damn, I was wrong. Instead, they just delete their account or never return.
Well, I think some of that is okay, right? I mean, you have tons of people that actually played Classic and they got into the game and they said, you know what? I don't like having to wait to level 40 for my mount. I don't like having to wait for an hour to do a dungeon. I want to be able to actually do decent damage as a tank and play solo as a tank. And like, that's what I want to do. I can't do it in Classic, so I quit the game. There's tons of people who actually do that.
Trust me, I fought these people for years leading up to the release of the game.
Yeah.
Paragraphs upon pages upon books. And people trying to convince me and others that we don't actually like something. And now
it's so
they're
weird.
mysteriously absent.
It's really weird.
But let's get
How'd
back on
that happen?
subject.
Now I wonder why.
It's certainly something that we've had little experience
I
with.
wonder why.
In fact, the only game that I know off the top of my head that tried something similar is RuneScape.
Oh, how about that?
MMOs have come and gone, of course, but none saw their demise with intention.
Yeah, how
It's
about
like,
that?
okay, guys, we got the IP for Warhammer, a legend in its own right in the world of fantasy. Orcs, elves, undead, and magic.
Oh.
You know, there's another MMO out
Okay.
right now that's doing pretty well. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. Ooh.
Or, okay, guys, we got the IP for Star
Ooh.
Wars.
Oh my
a
God.
legend
How
in its
could
own
Star
right in the
Wars
world
fail?
of sci-fi.
How could
Jedi,
Star Wars
Sith,
not do well?
Spaceships, and siblings kissing each other.
Yeah,
What
that's
could
great.
possibly go wrong? The death of your typical
Yeah.
MMO has 3 routes. There's one huge sudden change in design that completely changes the focus of the game, and what made
Yep.
it special is cast aside for the sake of conformity.
Was this game good back in the day, Star Wars Galaxies? Because I remember hearing a lot of positive things about it. I remember hearing, like, Warhammer was shit. I remember, like, hearing almost all negative things about Warhammer, but, like, in retrospective, I think a lot of people are actually positive towards Star Wars Galaxies.
Forming to a new standard. Option B, we have a slow but steady degradation in quality or appeal.
Yeah.
And they just can't replace subscribers
300,000.
as quickly as they're losing them.
Wow.
And alternatively, the game just never had it to begin with.
Jesus.
It was
yeah.
hyped up to be this massive thing, and after the initial launch honeymoon period
Yeah.
has worn off, people see it for what it truly is.
That's what happens with a lot of games now, is like games get like super overhyped, and then like everybody thinks that this game is going to be like the next coming of Jesus. Like I think a good example of this is like Valorant. Like how many times did you see all of these like washed up CSGO players or PUBG players with future Valorant Pro in their fucking in their Twitter thumbnail? There were so many of them. And like obviously a lot of people like the game. You know, a lot of people really like the game and it's doing well, but like the thing is like, so like here's a good game, or here's a bad game, here's a good game, and here's where people's expectations were. So it's not like Valorant was down here. Valorant was just right about here. And so it still just didn't meet people's massive fucking expectations. And I think that's the difference.
A rushed out, broken down mess. There's
Fire
a hidden,
shots, anything like
obscure
that?
fourth
Hey,
route
it is
here
what it
though.
is.
The developers intentionally halt content updates, even if the game is performing well. A situation that's
Yeah.
unique to classic World of Warcraft.
That is,
It's a catch-22. For the game to be successful, it must be replicated as closely as possible to its original design cycle
the most part,
during
yeah.
04 to 07, and for that to happen, it must recreate its original end, which many people believe is where it will fail.
TBC.
For the game to succeed,
Yeah.
it must end. In short,
Oh,
no one
shit.
really knows what'll happen. Not even Blizzard, I'm sure.
God
Will
damn.
the players be content for the first time in history with an MMO that doesn't release new content? Or will the player base dwindle? How many alts can players make and re-gear them up in the endgame rating? Or maybe PvP is their choice.
I feel like actually Classic WoW won't lose like a massive amount of people whenever they stop releasing content because the content stops being released. I think that people will just stop playing it because they would have felt that they finished the game. Because the truth is, a lot of people that play Classic WoW also play retail. And a lot of people that play retail also play Classic WoW. So there's like this huge overlap. So whenever you're paying your $15 a month, then you'd have a lot of people who are just going to go back and forth between the games. And especially if they bring out TBC servers. So if they bring out TBC servers, we can almost fucking guarantee that what they're going to do it and the way that they're going to do it is they're going to bring out the servers and then they're going to keep some classic servers. So there's going to effectively be 3 versions of the game. There'll be like the vanilla, pristine classic servers, there'll be the TBC progressive servers, and then there'll be the Shadowlands servers. That's probably what's going to happen. So if classic isn't good, these people are still getting their sub value from TBC and from from Shadowlands. So the only real reason that they wouldn't be playing the game is if they got bored with it. And I think that's really why a lot of people stop playing, because they stop getting rewards in the game. It's too much, man. I kind of worry about that too, but I feel like retail suffers because of this. I mean, like, really, dude? Like, they don't do shit with classic. Like, they don't fix, like, there's like obvious, like, glaring fucking, like, huge bugs in the game. And Blizzard's like, yeah, that's crazy. So it works that way? Damn, we didn't even know that. That's cool. And that's pretty much about all they say.
Whereas in raiding, there's that drop-off in an already pretty trivial difficulty as people gear up.
Yeah.
But PvP will always provide that challenge. The most difficult hurdle,
I actually disagree with that a little bit. I think that PvP won't provide the same challenge because everybody kind of knows what happens in PvP. So like, for example, if you PvP in Classic as a warrior, you know that you're probably going to win most fights against rogues. You're going to probably win most fights against hunters. You're going to win probably, like, I'd say 50% of fights against paladins, maybe 60% versus shamans, and like 0% versus mages, probably 20% versus warlocks. And that's just the way that it's going to go. You see what I mean? And so the game becomes very formulaic to a good player because they know what the outcome of the game is going to be because they know what everybody has. It's kind of like this. It's like, imagine everybody has like a different set of chess pieces that they can use. So like nobody has a full set of chess pieces, but there's like a mage that has like a queen piece and, like 5 pawns. And the warrior has 2 knights and like a bishop. And guess who's going to come out ahead? Well, the fucking mage is going to come out ahead. But you already know going into it that you're going to win or lose. And I think that's why classic PvP doesn't really have as much longevity, is because you know going into it most of the time who's going to win. And I think a fight and a game, a PvP game, is not really as engaging and as enjoyable to watch and play if you know ahead of time if you're going to win or lose.
I think, though, is the community.
Yeah.
With Classic being so dependent and intertwined with that community, there's a lot at stake. There are a lot of people who play not really for the game itself, but rather for the people they're playing with.
Wait, Smitty,
I think a lot of people say the same for current, but I wager it's more intense with Classic since it's so community-oriented.
I agree with that.
It's the domino effect
Completely
that I've seen kill many guilds throughout the game's lifespan.
Yeah.
One guy quits, and 2 of his friends quit,
Guys, check this out.
and to each of their friends.
No.
Oh, there goes the officer, and then the GM because he can't run it all by himself.
This is what happens all the time. Like I know, like for my guild, like what ended up happening is like as soon as some people stopped playing, it became harder to find raid groups. Then as soon as you started having trouble finding raid groups, then it just became hard to do anything else. So this is exactly what happens, right? Is like you start losing people and you lose more people. And then like there's tons of people. If I ask them why they stopped playing, usually one of the big reasons why they stopped playing is because their friends stopped playing. And if their friends were still playing the game, then they probably would still be attached to the game.
In the right environment, this can happen in the span of a week.
Yeah.
There'll always be a zealot-like following who will play the game no matter what. But how big is that following is the question. Will it be enough to keep the game alive? I can't answer that, but I can guess. First, let's clarify the question and assume that we're not getting Classic Plus or fresh servers.
Yeah, probably not.
I personally think that it's a 100% chance that we're getting fresh servers at the very least. But for the sake of argument, let's just assume the worst case scenario. Naxxramas comes out, and then we get nothing. The real question, though, is when do you consider a game to be dead? If all this...
I feel like a game would be dead, for me personally. The game would be dead if you can't complete the raids reasonably in pugs. So like if there's no way to complete the raid in pugs because there's not enough people playing the game, then I would consider it dead. Like that would be pretty much the metric that I would use. Obviously, like because that's like in-game content that is not doable. Like period, just based off of the population. Like that's probably the metric that I would use. So BFA is dead. Well, no, there's tons of people that play BFA and do the raids together. Like I don't know. Like that's not really, that's not really what I would say. But anyway, you're right though. It's like cross server and everything. But like the culture of the game is much different. But I do think that obviously like the cross faction does blur the lines, etc. But what I mean to say is that that's kind of where I would look at the game actually being dead. I think if they don't let you transfer your character over to a classic only server, they're going to make a lot of people really mad. Because there's a lot of people who have spent the last 2 years working on their gear for their classic character, and they want to have that gear for perpetuity, basically, so they can just have this really badass geared character in classic WoW that they've spent all the time on. And if they force people into playing TBC, dude, so many people are going to be fucking furious about that. I can already guarantee it.
servers shut down, or maybe there's just a few running.
Yeah.
How many? By now, it's about a 99.9% chance that the Burning Crusade is coming out. I
Yeah.
don't think that Classic would ever die unless Blizzard liquidates, but I do foresee that the player base will take a substantial hit when BC releases.
Absolutely.
Current and Classic,
Yeah.
although they share the same name, are MMOs of two different breeds. If you feel like having more than 4 stats, you play Classic.
Yep.
If you feel like doing a dungeon without globetrotting for 20 minutes, you play Current.
Yep.
If you want the Fisher-Price version of raiding, you play Classic.
Yep.
And if you want to pay for progression, you play Current.
Yeah.
They attract two different types of players, and a simple fact of the matter is when the Burning Crusade comes out, it'll attract the Classic crowd, and simply put, it'll be a game with, quote, fresh content versus a
Well,
game
it will
that's
cannibalize the Classic audience. Absolutely. Yeah, this is big, true, and so real. Like, I totally agree with this. Wasn't there a lot of Classic gear used in TBC? There was, but like the main reason why a lot of Classic gear was used in TBC is because people weren't good enough at the game back then to clear their raids and be able to actively and like effectively decide what's good and what's bad for their characters. So I think that like in real in like classic TBC, you're probably not going to see a lot of people using Nax gear and stuff like that in Karazhan. Like it will cannibalize to a certain degree, but other than that, like, because the thing is that you're right, but they're not going to release the Karazhan gear like whenever it was nerfed, right? So like in the beginning of TBC, the Karazhan gear was like terrible, and they buffed it later on. They're not going to release the Karazhan gear in the terrible state that it was in. So they're going to release it in a good state.
stagnating. Ask anyone who enjoys playing Classic if they think that the Burning Crusade is a good expansion.
Yeah.
You'll be very hard-pressed, I think, to find someone who says no.
Exactly.
Because it's pretty much Classic, but with more balance, more dungeons, raids, and more everything, really. You can bring a tank who's not a warrior, and priests aren't the best healers by far.
Yeah.
Fairy warriors don't dominate the DPS meters.
Okay. TBC sucks. Never mind. Yeah. I don't want to play it anymore. Changed my mind. Yeah, you know what? I don't have... you know, we talked about this for a while, and, you know, I was excited, but there's just certain things that have come to light that have just made me reconsider my, you know, my goals and what I want to do, and I'm not really a big fan of it anymore. And we talked about it. Yeah, and we talked about it, exactly. But no, I mean, like, there are going to be some things that are going to be better in TBC, like in vanilla items at the very beginning. Yeah, of course. But once you get into tier 4 content and you're clearing tier 4 content, you're probably not going to be using a lot of Nax gear. I mean, really, you're probably not. I mean, it's probably going to be like just kind of mix and match. But I did like, though, back in the day, how you could use old raid gear from the previous expansion in the new expansion. I think that was fucking awesome.
In PvP, while it still has burst,
Maybe a
it
trinket?
is not the same level of Classic.
Maybe.
With the advent of the resilience stat.
Like, that's a big maybe.
In my opinion, it's that sweet spot middle ground where there's more balance. But the things that make these classes unique aren't sacrificed. Everyone is closer to each other, but they still have their own charms and quirks that people come to love with Vanilla Classic. The world buff meta doesn't serve as a game genie code to breeze through these raids.
Thank fucking God. Like, the world buff meta, I like doing the raids with world buffs. It actually, in my opinion, makes it more fun. Yeah, it makes it a lot more fun to do the raids with world buffs because you can kill them faster and your character does more damage. It's just cool, right? I mean, you zone in. Like all I'm talking about purely is the gameplay of having world buffs. The gameplay of having world buffs and feeling how powerful your character is, to me, is cool. That's 100% fucking cool. But the problem is getting them. And the problem is like all the culture around getting them and the expectations around getting them. That's what I mean. Until you die. Yeah, exactly. Says the guy who quit Classic. What? What do you mean? I'm playing, like, what? I quit Classic? Are you crazy? Oh my God.
Because Blizzard had cut on to what was happening at that point.
I play every week.
It has a PvP system that doesn't require 16 hours a day, 7 days a week to make it to the top. And so on and so forth.
This is going to be awesome.
Most important of all, at its release, it's not stagnant. I personally think that
Exactly.
there will always be classic servers, and no matter what, it's done well.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it won't be more, but getting at least nearly a year and a half of booming success out of a 15-year-old game is a huge accomplishment,
It
no
is.
matter what.
Like, Classic
What
was a
game have
huge
you played
success.
recently that kept your attention for a year and a half? And again, this is all assuming...
That's actually a really, really, really good fucking point. Like what Madseason just said, that's a really, really good fucking point. Like, what game keeps you interested in it for a year? I would say basically no game. Like, yeah, I don't even fucking know. Like, OSRS? Yeah, but like other MMOs, right? And I feel like for 99% of people, not 99, but like for a lot of people, very, very, very rarely do you get connected to a game that much for that long.
No Classic Plus nor Fresh servers. If they do that, all bets are off.
Yeah.
In regards to Fresh servers, the advent of private servers proves this, as they've been in perpetual restarts for the past decade.
That's about right.
People still play them.
I actually think that I said this before, I actually think that the private servers being shut down and never actually reaching full cycle into Naxx increased the lifespan and the excitement of playing vanilla WoW. Because it was like they kept fucking... Dude, they kept getting you, they kept edging you, they kept edging you, and they kept edging you, and they never let you finish. They did reach it though?
That's where
Some
the
of them did,
longevity
but many
and
did not.
replayability will be for Classic. You simply replay
Like the fresh
it over
servers
and
actually
over
reinvigorated
every
it
year
a
and a half
lot.
or so, or 2 years, starting from scratch with everyone else.
Yeah.
Some people ask, well, doesn't that get boring? Just doing the same thing over and over again?
Yeah, it kind of does.
Well, sex is the same thing over and over, and I don't know, does that get boring? And yes, that just...
All right. If they do classic fresh servers, I think they should change a few things if they do fresh servers. They should change the way like world buffs work, for example. Like if they did fresh servers, I would want to see no world buffs. Like just take them out of the game. Just make it to where they don't exist, period. Like not even out in the open world. They just simply don't exist. And maybe add in a few other things to make it a little bit different. Like, so altered servers? Yeah, exactly. Like alter the servers if they ever did do a fresh server. And that way it would make the experience new. Like the reason why people play PoE every league is because there's a new league mechanic that redefines the game. And if you don't have effectively a league mechanic, then you're going to have people that are like, well, why do I want to do the same thing over again that I've already done before?
just happened. I actually compared classic World of Warcraft to sex.
There it is.
But I also think that in general, the player base will be pretty heavily split between Classic and BC. And the overall health of Classic Vanilla will suffer when
the
BC
sad
releases
music.
because they're just so
Oh, no.
similar. I'm not trying to be an alarmist here, just realistic.
Yeah.
My official prediction is that when BC launches, you will see a hit to the Classic community, and possibly a reduction in servers.
Probably
but
over
an
half.
always thriving scene if they go down that fresh server launch at the end of
Yeah.
each Naxxramas cycle, or maybe even Classic Plus, because I don't think that's fully off the table as of yet. Ultimately, though, it is just conjecture. I think no matter what, the developers and community as a whole should be proud of what they've done, both
I
old
agree.
and new. It hasn't been perfect. Botting
100%.
and the trivial difficulty and rating have certainly been blemishes on its run.
Yep.
But for me personally, it's been a fun ride. I made a lot of friends and thoroughly enjoyed myself for the past year.
So I actually don't think that it was Blizzard's fault, and it was nobody's fault that the rating wasn't good and the rating wasn't challenging except for the communities. It was the community's fault for romanticizing the classic WoW difficulty to such a degree that people thought it was going to be this massive trial of fucking being a man. And the issue is that if they had just come in at the beginning and said, listen, like the raids were easy back then, but they were fun, then it would have been fine. But the problem is that so many people made this massive fucking thing about it. Like, oh my God, these raids are so hard. And, you know, you have to have 40 people. And, you know, if you didn't do this right, everybody would die. And, you know, something crazy like that. I just feel like that's why the rating was bad. It wasn't bad because it was bad fundamentally. The rating in Classic is fine. The problem is that it's bad because people are comparing it to something that never existed.
I already have a lot of good memories. I wonder how many of them would have thought that the game they were making 15 years ago would still be relevant today. They made something that truly is timeless and brought many people together. After years and years of you think you do's but you don'ts, and it'll never happens, and the walls of no, a small group of developers and a dedicated community said screw that crap. Give the people what they want.
Fuck them, dude.
There's just something about the community that makes it a more enjoyable experience for everyone. One of the biggest differences with current and classic, I think, is that it's game-driven content versus player-driven content. One of classic's biggest weaknesses is actually its biggest strength.
That's exactly right. It's basically the best and the worst thing about classic is the community. Like being able to play with people and like be friends with people and everything in classic WoW is like one of the best things about it. But the problem with that is that you also have like the classic spurgery, and like there are people in classic who, it's like, I guess retail has this too, but in retail, like people are just more removed from it, and people like that just kind of get, they get alienated from the community, and people stop playing with them. But in classic WoW, I think that because like servers are such like a closed space, that it's harder to like just alienate and remove people from the community in the same way that it is now in retail.
Endgame is so basic.
People are more independent in retail. Yeah, exactly.
You aren't led around on a leash through the form of 200 daily and weekly chores. And one of the big reasons is why you see all of these independent PvP tournaments and events.
Wait a minute.
And one of the big reasons.
I remember this. I remember that this was the first duel that we had at the dueling competition, and Venruki went up against Esfan's paladin friend, Drakova. And we were dueling down there. Dude, this was fucking awesome, man. I remember that. This was the day basically where we came up, started thinking about the idea of doing OTK. Like this was the fucking event right here.
That's why I see all of these independent PvP.
It was a really popular event.
Because A, the game is community driven, and B, you just have more time for it.
Oh wait, that was me too, wasn't it?
Because A, the game is community driven.
No fucking way. This was never. We all went to Algai's Isle and we tried. Dude, I forgot all about this. Holy shit, man! It's really cool to see that again.
And B, you just have more time for it.
Yeah.
When your content is player-driven, it'll be relevant as long as there are players. No matter how many quirks there are.
Are you trying to kill me?
Player-driven.
What? Oh, I beat his ass, dude. That's right, dude. That's right. Don't mess with me. Look at that. My whole group is trying to kill me.
It'll be
Those
relevant
were some good streams.
as long as there are players. No matter how many quirks
that was
there
really
are
fun,
that
man.
many would deem to be objective flaws.
They died so fast.
The bottom line is that no one can say for sure what'll happen, but the one thing I'm confident about is that the 1.5 years of great success and the friendships forged over that time is more than worth it.
Yeah.
And here's hoping for many more.
There it is.
Oh, and by the way, I told you it was gonna rain. No one believed me.
Okay. Very clever. Very, very clever.
Farewell for now, mortals.
How
We
funny.
hope you
Good,
enjoyed
good one.
today's video.
Good one, dude.
See you again.
Good one,
soon.
dude. So here's the thing. Classic was shit after Phase 2. It wasn't shit after Phase 2. It was shit in Phase 2. Classic was shit in Phase 2. After Phase 2 and before Phase 2, it was fine. Phase 2 was just a really bad point in time in the game, and because it was such a bad point in time in the game, a lot of people stopped playing. That's basically what happened. It's like real life, but instead of purples, you get purples instead of depression. That's basically it. You don't miss an old game, you miss your childhood whenever you played the game. Deep quotes aside, it was kind of sad whenever you see the time fly so fast as an adult. I'm glad I got to relive my childhood one last time. I agree, man. I think this is the same case with a lot of people. Like, a lot of people miss vanilla WoW, but what they miss more about vanilla WoW is their vanilla lifestyle. And that was at least the case with me, right? I miss the game too. I enjoy the game. I love the game. But it's one and the same for me, I would say. Perhaps not the game that we play, but the friends we make along the way. Yeah, there it is, man. I don't think Classic will die outright. I do think it'll fall victim to the TF2 veteran syndrome. Though lots of guilds will be broken, lots of casual players will presume that's kind of the end of it and leave. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's really bad, and this is why WoW stopped announcing their sub numbers, because nobody wants to play an MMO that's dying. Like, MMOs are built around playing with other people, and so you're not going to want to play a game that's fucking dying. Like, I mean, it makes perfect fucking sense. It's not even sheep behavior or anything like that. It's just makes perfect sense. So MMO genre is not as popular though. Well, I just mean in general, right? I mean, I think it's the same thing. Obviously, not everyone in Classic will succumb to this, but they'll still be vets. They'll be more than happy to help new blood, but a good majority will behave this way. Yeah, I think once people think that it's over, then they'll leave, regardless of if it is actually over or if they've accomplished their goals or not. People will leave because they don't want to be stuck playing a dead game. That's what it comes down to for me.